Exploring History presents the complete saga of Greek mythology. When the sky was young, before there was light, before there was sound, before any dream had dared to dream itself, there was only the endless whisper of nothing. It wasn't silence, exactly. It was potential, a deep, coiled breath waiting to become the universe. From that sacred stillness stirred chaos, not madness, but the raw, breathing possibility of all things. Out of chaos came the first shapes of existence: Gaia, the earth, solid and nurturing; Tartarus, the abyss beneath all worlds; Eros, the pulse of desire that drives creation forward; Erebus, the shadow of the unseen; and Nyx, the velvet darkness of the night. Gaia, the mother of all, opened her green arms and gave rise to the sky itself, Uranus, her firstborn son and her eternal lover. Together, they lay across the void, earth and sky entwined, birthing mountains, seas, and the first living heartbeat of the cosmos. From their love came children vast and strange, the Titans, shining giants who strode the newborn world. Oceanus, who wrapped his arms around Gaia as the endless sea. Hyperion, whose eyes burned with the light of the sun. Gaia, bright as dawn. Rhea, the mother of gods yet unborn. And Cronus, silent, watchful, with a smile that hid an iron will. But not all their children were beautiful. Some were terrifying: the Cyclopes, with one blazing eye each, who forged lightning in their hands; and the Hecatonchires, the 100-handed ones, whose voices were thunder, whose power could shatter mountains. Uranus looked upon these monstrous children and felt fear coil in his chest. He hurled them down into Tartarus, locking them away beneath the roots of the world. Gaia cried out in pain, not from her body, but from her heart. Her children, her blood, buried alive in darkness. Her grief became fury, and from that fury she shaped a weapon from stone and silver, a sickle sharper than any edge known to gods or men. She called to her Titan sons in secret. "Your father has chained your brothers. Who among you will avenge them?" Silence hung heavy, until one voice broke it, smooth, deliberate, dangerous. "I will," said Cronus. The world trembled as night fell and Uranus descended to lie upon Gaia once more. From the shadows, Cronus lifted the sickle and struck. With a single motion, the sky was severed from the earth. Uranus's cry echoed through eternity. From his blood that fell upon Gaia's soil, new beings were born: the Furies, who avenge all wrongs, and the Giants, whose rage would one day shake Olympus itself. From the foam that gathered where the blood touched the sea, a goddess rose, beautiful beyond words, smiling as if she knew the power she carried within her. Aphrodite, the spirit of desire, born from violence and beauty alike. Cronus took his father's throne, the first ruler of the world. The Titans rejoiced for a while. But Gaia, wise and weary, whispered a warning: "As you did to your father, so shall your child do to you." Cronus laughed, but the echo of her words clung to his heart like a shadow. He ruled with Rhea, his sister and queen, through a golden age where rivers sang and no man knew hunger or pain. Yet, as each of their children was born, Cronus remembered the prophecy. Fear, that oldest of tyrants, whispered in his ear. And so, one by one, as each child came crying into the world, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, Cronus swallowed them whole. Rhea's grief grew heavier with every child devoured. She would lie awake at night beside the god who had eaten her children, listening to the rumble of their muffled cries within his immortal stomach. When her sixth child was due, she could bear it no longer. She fled to the island of Crete, hidden by Gaia's hand, and there, in a cave wrapped in starlight, she gave birth to Zeus. His cry was a thunderclap across the newborn world. To protect him, Rhea wrapped a stone in swaddling cloth and offered it to Cronus. The Titan, too proud to doubt, swallowed it down. The infant Zeus was hidden in a cradle of gold, guarded by the curettes, warriors who clashed their shields to drown his cries. Fed by the divine goat Amalthea, raised by nymphs and winds, Zeus grew not only in strength but in purpose. He looked up at the heavens that were once his grandfather's body and felt destiny burn in his chest like lightning waiting for its first strike. Years passed. The boy became a god. And when the time was ripe, Zeus descended to confront his father. He did not come alone. Gaia, remembering her first wounds, guided him. Metis, the goddess of cunning, gave him a potion that would make Cronus yield. In a feast beneath the mountains, Zeus offered his father the drink. Cronus, unsuspecting, drank deep and his stomach heaved. One by one, the swallowed gods were freed, reborn in light: Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon. They rose, radiant and furious, around their brother Zeus, and the war for the universe began. That was the first great war, the Titanomachy. The sky was torn with lightning. Mountains were thrown like stones. The 100-handed ones, freed from Tartarus, hurled boulders the size of islands. The Cyclopes forged weapons of destiny: a thunderbolt for Zeus, a trident for Poseidon, a helmet of invisibility for Hades. For 10 years, the world burned. Cronus and the Titans fought from Mount Othrys. Zeus and his siblings battled from Mount Olympus. Oceans boiled, forests turned to ash, and even the stars trembled. But fate had already chosen. With one final strike, Zeus hurled his thunderbolt and split the mountain of the Titans in two. The old gods fell. Cronus was bound in chains unbreakable and cast into the depths of Tartarus, guarded by the creatures he had once imprisoned. When the dust settled, Zeus stood amid the silence of a remade world. The age of the Titans was over. The age of the Olympians had begun. He raised his hand, and thunder answered. Lightning carved his name into the heart of time. And the world, once silent, once wild, began to speak in stories. The rise of Olympus. When the last thunder faded and the dust of war settled upon the newborn earth, the air trembled with a silence so deep that even the gods paused to listen. The Titans were bound, the fires had dimmed, and from the wreckage of mountains rose a new order, bright, daring, and full of thunderous ambition. Upon the highest peak, Mount Olympus, the young gods built their throne. The mountain pierced the clouds, its crown wrapped in eternal gold light. From there, Zeus looked down upon the world that stretched beneath him, oceans still steaming from war, forests trembling like newborn creatures. It was his now. The skies belonged to him, the earth to his brothers, the seas to the deep pulse of Poseidon, and the shadows below to Hades. A pact was sworn in lightning. Zeus drew lots. Zeus would rule the heavens and the air. Poseidon would command the seas and all that swam within. Hades would reign over the underworld, keeper of the dead and judge of shadows. The earth itself, neutral and patient, would belong to all. For a moment, peace seemed possible. The Olympians built their golden palaces among the clouds, halls with pillars of marble and floors that shimmered with starlight. From these heights they watched mankind's first dawn, the soft smoke of campfires, the clumsy shaping of stone into tools. Zeus smiled. They will worship, he said. They will remember us. But not all gods were content to watch. From the mountains of the world came a figure older than Zeus himself, Prometheus, the Titan who had not fought in the Great War. He was clever, compassionate, and curious, too curious for a god. He looked upon humanity and saw something fragile and unfinished. They have hands, he said, but no power to create. Minds, but no fire to think. So, one night, Prometheus climbed Olympus while the gods slept. From the forge of Hephaestus he stole a single spark, the fire of divine creation, and carried it down through the clouds. In the dark, he offered it to mankind. The first flame danced in human hands. It was small at first, a flicker trembling against the wind, but then it grew, and with it grew hunger, invention, ambition. Mankind learned to forge metal, to build cities, to look at the stars and wonder if they were not gods themselves. Zeus awoke to the smoke rising from mortal hearths and felt rage bloom like a storm. He has defied me, he thundered. He has stolen fire from heaven and given it to beasts. Prometheus was seized and brought before the throne of Olympus. Why? Zeus demanded. Prometheus did not bow. Because they will one day build temples for you, and you will need them to believe you are worthy of worship. Zeus's fury split the skies. Then let them worship your agony. He chained Prometheus to the desolate cliffs of the Caucasus, high above the clouds, where the wind never slept. Each day an eagle, the bird of Zeus himself, descended and tore out his liver, and each night it grew back again. For all eternity, pain and defiance kept each other company. Yet in the hearts of men, Prometheus's fire burned brighter than ever. Zeus's vengeance did not end there. He turned his gaze upon the humans and said, if they hold the gift of fire, let them also know the weight of curiosity. He ordered Hephaestus, the divine smith, to shape a being from clay, not man, but woman. Into her form the gods poured gifts, beauty from Aphrodite, grace from the Muses, curiosity from Hermes, the cunning of Athena. They named her Pandora, all-gifted, and placed in her hands a sealed jar, bound with warnings. She lived among men, radiant as the dawn, and her presence alone stirred the first heartbeat of desire. But curiosity whispered stronger than fear. One night, unable to resist, Pandora lifted the lid. Out spilled sickness, greed, jealousy, and death, all the miseries that had never existed before. By the time she slammed it shut, only one thing remained inside: hope. And so mankind learned that life was not a gift freely given, but a balance, joy weighed by sorrow, fire balanced by shadow. Meanwhile, Olympus grew restless. The gods had built their realm, but their hearts hungered for stories, for offerings, for worship. Hermes, born of Zeus and Maia, became their messenger, a god of cunning feet and silver tongue, who could fly between worlds. Apollo, son of Zeus and Leto, rose as the god of light, music, and prophecy, while his twin Artemis ruled the hunt and moonlit wilds. Athena, born fully grown from Zeus's head after a dream of pain and lightning, became the goddess of wisdom and war's strategy. Each god had their realm, their pride, their story, and together they shaped an age both glorious and dangerous. But balance, as ever, could not last. For even gods cannot escape their own natures. Zeus, Lord of Thunder, was a storm-made flesh, powerful, brilliant, and endlessly unfaithful. His heart wandered where his lightning struck, and with every love came a new legend. Fire and punishment. The world had learned fire, yet it had not learned caution. The cities of men were tiny sparks in a vast wilderness, smoke rising from their hearths like prayers to unseen gods. Each flame that trembled in the night reminded Zeus of Prometheus's audacity, the gift he had stolen and given, shaping the fate of mankind forever. But the Lord of Olympus was not a god to watch silently. His heart, ever stormy, sought engagement with the world below, and so it began, as it always did, with desire. The first was Io, a maiden fair as the dawn, her hair spilling like sunlight over her shoulders. Zeus saw her in a river valley, laughing among the reeds, and his pulse thundered in rhythm with the storms above. Disguised as a cloud, he approached her, whispering promises in a voice both warm and terrifying. Hera, ever watchful, sensed the movement of passion. Zeus, fearing her wrath, transformed Io into a white heifer. Even in her bovine form, he could not leave her. Hera, clever and vengeful, demanded the creature as a gift and set the monster Argus, a 100-eyed guardian, to watch her every step. Io wandered the earth, tormented, crossing deserts and rivers, until finally Zeus sent Hermes, sly and cunning, to lull Argus to sleep and strike him down. In tears of relief and rage, Io became human again, but her wanderings left a trail of legend that would echo through time. Next came Europa, a princess of Sidon, her voice like wind over ember seas. Zeus, ever inventive, assumed the form of a bull and carried her across the ocean, to Crete, where she bore sons who would one day rule islands and cities Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Sarpedon. Even now, in the distant sea, the echoes of Zeus's theft could be heard in the waves, a story of desire and power intertwined. And still he wandered. He fell for Semele, mortal yet radiant, whose laughter lit a room brighter than torches. Hera, in jealousy, whispered deceit into Semele's ear. Semele demanded that Zeus reveal himself in all his glory. The god of thunder obeyed, and fire, unsurprisingly, consumed her. From the flames, Zeus saved her unborn child, Dionysus, god of wine, ecstasy, and chaos, sewing him into his thigh until the time came to birth him. Thus did the first mortals learn the danger of God's attention. Fire brought knowledge, power, and pleasure, but also suffering, obsession, and death. But Zeus's affairs were not the only source of human consequence. Prometheus's gift had awakened both ingenuity and recklessness. Men built temples and cities, but they also killed one another, coveted more than they could hold, and shaped tools that could maim as easily as create. Seeing this, Zeus conceived a plan, one both cruel and cunning, to remind mankind that fire, though divine, came at a cost. He summoned Hephaestus, the master smith, and together they shaped the first woman in divine form, Pandora, whose beauty could topple kings, whose curiosity could undo the world. Each god contributed a gift. Aphrodite gave beauty that made hearts ache, Hermes, cunning and deceit, Athena, skill and grace, Apollo, song and light, and Hestia, warmth and charm. Into her hands, they placed a jar carefully sealed and warned, "Open it, and know the consequences of your curiosity." Pandora lived among men, radiant and unassuming at first, yet always guided by curiosity. One day, temptation overcame her. She lifted the lid. From it spilled all the evils of the world, sickness, envy, death, and sorrow. They flew like blackbirds across the lands, infecting hearts and minds. Men cried, women wept, children shivered, and even the animals fled in terror. Only hope remained, trapped in the bottom of the jar. And so humanity learned to endure. Even in suffering, even in sorrow, there was the glimmer of resilience, a spark left by the gods' cunning. Time marched onward. The humans, scattered and fragile, multiplied. Their cities grew. Their kings waged war, built temples, and raised armies. Yet even with fire and hope, mankind's recklessness could not be contained. Zeus, seeing their folly, decided on a reckoning of water. The heavens gathered. Clouds thickened. Rivers swelled. The oceans rose in a fury that mirrored his wrath. Deucalion, a righteous man, and his wife Pyrrha were warned by Prometheus of the flood to come. They built a chest, sturdy as Olympus itself, and waited as the waters consumed all else. Mountains disappeared, forests drowned, cities sank beneath the tide. And when the storm passed, the chest settled upon Mount Parnassus, leaving the couple as the sole survivors of mankind. But the story did not end with despair. The oracle of Themis told them how to repopulate the earth: throw the bones of your mother behind you. At first, they recoiled, unsure what this meant. Then they understood: the bones of Mother Earth, the stones. They cast stones over their shoulders. The stones thrown by Deucalion became men, those thrown by Pyrrha became women. The earth, always patient, reshaped itself anew. Humanity rose again, wiser, wary, yet still mortal, forever touched by the caprice of gods. As the ages of men and early gods intertwined, Olympus flourished. Each day brought new dramas. Apollo pursued Daphne, whose transformation into a laurel tree became eternal. Artemis punished hunters who dared overstep the sanctity of the wild. Athena gave wisdom to heroes, yet reminded them that intellect was only as strong as courage. Ares, ever bloodthirsty, stoked wars that mortals could barely comprehend. Through it all, Zeus watched. He ruled the skies, commanded lightning, seduced and punished, laughed and raged. Yet his greatest lesson, repeated across generations, was the same: that the gifts of gods are double-edged, that fire warms but can burn, that curiosity can create, yet destroy. And somewhere, chained to the cliff of eternity, Prometheus endured his suffering a warning, his gift a beacon. The stage was set. Mankind, now armed with fire, hope, and sorrow, would give rise to heroes, to stories, to legends, stories so vast they could fill the heavens themselves. From these tales would come Perseus, Hercules, and the demigods who dared defy fate. From them would come the Trojan Saga: wars, love, betrayal, and glory. The age of punishment had ended. The age of heroes was about to begin. The rule of the gods. Mount Olympus, rising above clouds and storms, gleamed with gold and marble, untouched by mortal hands. Its halls shimmered with sunlight, reflected in the rivers of crystal that ran like veins through the palace. Here, the gods of the new age, the Olympians, ruled, their lives intertwined with destiny, desire, and the ceaseless drama of eternity. At the center sat Zeus, lord of sky and storm, his eyes flashing like twin suns, his voice rolling like thunder across the mountains and seas. Around him circled the 12, each radiant and formidable, each bearing gifts and flaws that would shape the world below. Hera, his queen, goddess of marriage and childbirth, ruled with dignity and subtle fury, ever watchful for the wayward hearts of gods and mortals alike. Poseidon, lord of oceans and earthquakes, paced the halls in waves of brooding strength, his trident a promise of both bounty and destruction. Hades, sovereign of the underworld, was quiet, immovable, yet his shadow stretched across the living, a constant reminder of mortality. Demeter, goddess of the harvest, wove the seasons, her joy in growth shadowed by sorrow at human suffering. Athena, born of Zeus's head, shone with intellect and strategy, guiding heroes, cities, and wars with a mind sharper than any sword. Apollo, radiant and musical, carried prophecy and healing, while Artemis, his twin, roamed wild forests, protector of animals and the untamed. Ares, god of war, thrived on chaos and blood, a constant challenge to Athena's careful planning. Aphrodite, embodiment of desire, could sway hearts and kingdoms with a glance or a whisper. Hephaestus, master craftsman, forged weapons and wonders, his skill unmatched though his form marked him as outsider among beauty and grace. Hermes, messenger and trickster, danced between worlds, bridging the mortal and divine with wit and cunning. Hestia, keeper of the hearth, preserved the warmth and sanctity of both home and Olympus itself. Together, they formed a family of immense power, yet not without conflict. The threads of jealousy, desire, pride, and vengeance wove endlessly through their lives. Their rule was absolute, but they found endless amusement and irritation in watching mortals stumble, strive, and worship. The Olympians did not merely sit in halls of marble. They interacted, intervened, and inspired the mortal world. Cities arose where they walked. Heroes were born where they blessed. The first kings swore oaths in their names, and the first priests whispered prayers into the wind, hoping the gods would notice. Yet with power came endless drama. Zeus, restless and unfaithful, pursued mortal women and goddesses alike, each union creating legends, heroes, and conflicts. Hera, fierce and cunning, sought vengeance on each woman who dared to capture her husband's attention and often upon the children born from these unions. Aphrodite's love sparked wars, Ares's battles shattered villages. Even quiet Hestia's hearth could not quell the storms around them. Olympus itself was a living stage of intrigue. Festivals echoed with divine music and song, ambrosia flowed like rivers, and the gods celebrated victories, plotted schemes, and shared whispered secrets that could alter the fates of mortals. Below Olympus, mortals flourished and suffered under divine influence. The gods taught, tempted, and tested humanity. Athena guided cities to strength and strategy, Demeter punished them with famine when the earth was disrespected. Poseidon stirred storms to remind sailors of their place. Apollo spoke through oracles, cryptic and commanding, weaving prophecy into the hearts of kings and heroes alike. The age of heroes was dawning. In the valleys, mountains, and rivers, men began to dream of greatness, their hands building temples, weapons, and cities. Kings like Minos of Crete claimed divine favor, yet even their wisdom was tempered by mortal ambition and folly. Heroes were born, some from mortal mothers, some from unions of gods and men carrying both divine blessing and the burden of fate. Prometheus's spark continued to burn among men. Fire, knowledge, and curiosity drove them to craft cities, cultivate lands, and invent tools. But curiosity carried consequences, as mortals learned from Pandora's gift, sickness, envy, death, and hope in equal measure. Each act of innovation was a step closer to greatness and to disaster. Stories of gods and mortals intertwined like threads of a tapestry, each strand carrying lessons, warnings, and triumphs. Zeus's children like Hercules, born of mortal courage and divine strength, or Perseus, destined to slay monsters, would soon rise, carrying Olympus's influence into the mortal world. Mountains, rivers, and forests bore witness. The first temples were raised, adorned with statues of the gods, and altars smoked with offerings of grain, meat, and wine. Priests and oracles spoke their will, while poets began to sing of the deeds of gods and heroes. In this era, the lines between mortal and divine blurred. Every decision, every battle, every love story had the potential to reach Olympus. Every triumph or tragedy echoed in the hearts of gods who watched with curiosity, pride, or wrath. And yet, the greatest stories were still to come. The age of heroes, of mortal courage, divine interference, and legendary quests was just beginning. From the union of gods and humans would emerge warriors, slayers of monsters, and figures whose names would endure beyond time itself. The age of Olympus was one of power, passion, and peril, where even gods learned to weave patience with fury, wisdom with cunning, and love with vengeance. Every mortal who dared to act under their gaze would leave a mark on the world, and every god who intervened would weave their own tale into eternity. The stage was set. The flames of destiny were lit. The heroes had yet to rise, but their legends would soon roar louder than thunder, faster than lightning, and endure longer than time itself. The loves of Zeus. Zeus, king of Olympus, ruled the sky with lightning in his hands and fire in his heart. But his dominion extended beyond storms and clouds, it reached into the hearts of gods and mortals alike. His desires were as vast as the heavens, his passions as unpredictable as thunder. Wherever he looked, beauty and courage called to him, and with each union, a new story was born, a story that would shape the course of humanity. The mortal and divine world alike trembled at the wake of Zeus's loves. Each encounter was a spark, small, subtle, yet capable of igniting entire generations of legends. Alcmene, a mortal queen of unmatched courage, became the mother of Hercules, destined to bear strength beyond any mortal and courage beyond any god. Born under impossible trials, Hercules would one day complete the 12 labors, battling monsters, rivers of fire, and the caprices of the divine itself. Then there was Danae, princess of Argos, whose father had imprisoned her, fearing a prophecy of his death at the hands of her child. Zeus, descending as a golden rain, found a way past walls and chains. From this union was born Perseus, destined to slay the Gorgon Medusa and bring glory and terror to the mortal realm. His sword, shield, and courage were gifts not only of his mother's ingenuity but of the gods themselves, guided by Athena's wisdom and Hermes' cunning. Leda, another mortal, captivated him. In the guise of a swan, Zeus seduced her, and from their union came Helen of Troy, whose beauty would ignite one of the most devastating wars in human history, and Clytemnestra, whose cunning and wrath would shape the destinies of kings. Bloodlines of heroes and tragedy intertwined from a single encounter. Zeus's passions were not confined to mortals. Among goddesses, he pursued Demeter, Mnemosyne, and even Metis, whose wisdom once warned him of prophecies and betrayal. From each union came gifts to the world, children whose talents and destinies rippled through time. Metis, clever and cunning, bore Athena, goddess of wisdom, born fully grown from the thunder of Zeus's own head, a testament to the union of mind and might. Yet every union brought consequences. Hera, queen of Olympus and embodiment of marriage and vengeance, watched each affair with eyes like sharpened steel. Mortals who became his lovers often suffered under her wrath, goddesses found themselves ensnared in divine rivalry. Punishments, jealousy, and intrigue filled the heavens as much as thunder and fire. These divine loves did more than birth heroes. They shaped the mortal world. Through them, Zeus's influence touched every city, river, and battlefield. Heroes walked among men carrying divine strength, kings consulted oracles guided by Apollo, cities raised temples in honor of gods who had shaped their very bloodline. One of Zeus's most fateful loves was Semele, mother of Dionysus. Her mortal eyes glimpsed the god in all his glory, and fire consumed her. But from her death came the god of wine, ecstasy, and madness, whose power would inspire festivals, rebellion, and divine madness among men. Dionysus, born of both mortal fragility and immortal fire, became a symbol of passion unbound, a god of both revelry and terror. Yet Zeus's greatest legacy of love was not merely the offspring, but the intertwining of fate, mortality, and legend. From a single spark, empires rose and fell, wars were fought over the daughters and sons of his passions, cities and temples flourished because his heart, however unfaithful, touched the mortal plane. Each mortal and god who fell under his gaze became part of a story greater than themselves, a story that would echo through generations. Even the other gods could not ignore the ripple of his actions. Athena, born of Zeus's mind, guided heroes born of his mortal loves. Hermes whispered secrets and messages across the realms, ensuring the threads of fate remained taut. Apollo foretold consequences and blessings, while Artemis protected those mortals untouched by the chaos of desire. The balance of Olympus depended on both passion and restraint, ambition and caution. Thus, the world entered a new era, one in which demigods and mortals walked side by side, their lives shaped by divine intervention and mortal choice. Heracles, Perseus, Helen, and Dionysus were but the first of many whose actions would ripple across the ages. Mount Olympus, alive with gossip, jealousy, and schemes, became a theater where gods played out their desires, knowing that each love, each child, each act of passion or revenge would shape the destiny of the world below. And as Zeus looked down upon the earth, he saw heroes forming, wars approaching, cities rising, all under the shadow of his passions. The age of heroes was no longer approaching, it had begun. Every sword, every shield, every crown and city-state bore the echo of Olympus and the influence of the god whose loves could create legends and tragedies for all eternity. The Age of Heroes. The world below Olympus was alive with possibility. Mortals had fire, tools, and hope, but the blood of gods now ran through their veins. From these unions of mortal and divine sprang the first heroes, figures whose courage and cunning would shape kingdoms, slay monsters, and etch their names into eternity. Among the earliest and greatest was Heracles, son of Zeus and Alcmene. Even as a child, he displayed strength beyond imagination, crushing serpents sent to kill him in his crib, wielding a power no mortal could match. But strength alone was never enough. The gods tested him, sometimes cruelly, often unfairly. Hera, jealous and relentless, sought to destroy him at every turn, sending madness to cloud his mind, challenges to break his body. Yet Heracles endured. His 12 labors became legend, slaying the Nemean lion, whose hide could not be pierced by any weapon, capturing the golden hind of Artemis, cleansing the Augean stables in a single day, conquering the Lernaean hydra, whose heads multiplied with every blow. Each labor tested not just his body, but his spirit, and each triumph echoed across the mortal and divine worlds. In distant lands, Perseus, son of Zeus and Aeneia, faced challenges that would test cunning, courage, and destiny itself. Armed with gifts from the gods, Athena's polished shield, Hermes' winged sandals, Hades' helm of invisibility, he sought the Gorgon Medusa, whose gaze could turn men to stone. Perseus's courage and wit turned the impossible into reality. He beheaded Medusa and saved the princess Andromeda, whose beauty rivaled even that of Aphrodite. His deeds became stories whispered across islands, cities, and generations. Then came Jason, the young prince of Iolcus, destined for the quest of the Golden Fleece. With the guidance of the sorceress Medea herself, a child of magic and cunning, Jason assembled the Argonauts, a band of heroes whose names were spoken in awe: Orpheus, the musician whose songs tamed beasts, Castor and Pollux, brothers of valor, and many others, each with skill or strength that surpassed mortal limits. Their voyage was perilous, crossing seas filled with clashing rocks, dragons, and spirits. Yet it was not merely adventure that defined them, it was courage, friendship, and the indomitable will to claim what destiny promised. Even among lesser-known figures, heroism flourished. Bellerophon, riding the winged horse Pegasus, tamed the fire-breathing Chimera. Atalanta, swift and cunning, outran hunters and monsters alike, proving that bravery was not bound by gender, and countless others carved their stories into the world, leaving cities, temples, and tales that would endure long after their mortal lives ended. But heroism was never simple. Every victory bore consequence. Heracles' strength brought both awe and fear, Perseus' triumph stirred jealousy and envy, Jason's fleece ignited betrayal and tragedy. The gods, ever curious, sometimes helped, sometimes hindered their interventions, creating as many problems as solutions. Apollo guided the Argonauts, Athena aided Perseus, Hera both cursed and protected Heracles. The line between assistance and interference was thin, and mortals walked it at their own peril. Yet for all their trials, these heroes embodied ideals: courage, loyalty, ingenuity, and determination. Their stories were not just about defeating monsters or completing impossible tasks, they were about what it meant to stand against fate, to rise above weakness, and to leave a mark on the world that neither time nor death could erase. The Age of Heroes also revealed the interconnectedness of mortals and gods. Cities and kingdoms flourished under the patronage of Athena, Apollo, or Poseidon. Wars, both great and small, were often influenced by divine favor or wrath. Heroes were celebrated in festivals, songs, and temples, yet they were also tested relentlessly, their mortality a constant reminder that even divine blood could not protect them from suffering. Through these trials, humanity grew stronger, wiser, and more resilient. And in the shadows, the gods watched, laughed, cried, and schemed. Zeus, in particular, reveled in the unfolding drama. His loves had produced heroes, and now their deeds and fates wove the complex tapestry of mortal history, where courage, passion, and tragedy intertwined endlessly. Yet the greatest challenges were yet to come. The deeds of Heracles, Perseus, and Jason were only the beginning. The world was moving toward a war unlike any before, a war that would test the mettle of kings, the cunning of princes, and the loyalty of allies. A war that would take the beauty of mortals and turn it into a prize, a war that would ignite ambition, love, betrayal, and vengeance. The Trojan Saga loomed on the horizon, a story where heroes and gods would clash, where passion and pride would lead to destruction and glory, and where the world would witness legends that would endure for all eternity. The Age of Heroes had begun. And from the fires of courage, from the sparks of divine blood, the greatest stories of mankind were about to unfold. The Trojan Fire. The world had grown bold, its mortals daring, its heroes rising, and the gods watching with keen interest. Yet even in this age of courage and glory, desire and destiny could ignite a war the likes of which the earth had never seen. It began with a promise made by a goddess, a judgment that would unravel kingdoms and shape the fate of generations. It all began with Eris, the goddess of strife, uninvited to the wedding of Peleus and Thetis. In vengeance, she tossed among the guests a golden apple, inscribed with 3 simple words, "To the fairest." Immediately, the goddesses Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite claimed it, each certain of her superiority. Zeus, unwilling to judge the quarrel himself, appointed Paris, Prince of Troy, to decide. The mortal prince, unaware of the storm he was about to unleash, faced a fateful choice. Hera promised him kingdoms and power beyond imagination. Athena offered wisdom and victory in battle. Aphrodite, with a smile like the sunrise, promised him the love of the most beautiful woman in the world. Paris chose love, and with that decision, the die was cast. Helen, queen of Sparta and a woman whose beauty rivaled the sun and moon, became the prize. Her abduction or elopement, some whispered, ignited the flames that would burn for 10 long years. The call to arms went out. Heroes across Greece gathered under a single banner: Agamemnon, king of Mycenae, leading men who had fought monsters, sailed treacherous seas, and carried divine favor in their veins; Achilles, son of the sea nymph Thetis, whose rage and prowess would become the stuff of legend; Odysseus, clever beyond measure, whose mind was a weapon as sharp as any sword; and Ajax, Diomedes, and countless others, each carrying skill, pride, and a story that would intertwine with fate itself. The gods themselves could not resist meddling. Hera, angered by Paris's choice, lent her aid to the Greeks. Athena whispered strategy into mortal ears. Aphrodite guided Paris, protecting him from danger. Apollo cast plagues upon men and bent the will of kings. Even Zeus, though reluctant to tip the balance too far, ensured the war's outcome would shape destiny itself. The siege of Troy lasted 10 years, each year a testament to valor, cunning, and heartbreak. Cities burned and fell, rivers ran red, and the cries of the dying echoed across mountains and seas. Achilles, invincible yet tormented by pride and prophecy, killed Hector, prince of Troy, sending a shockwave of grief through the city's walls. Odysseus, cunning and relentless, devised the plan of the wooden horse, a device that would bring the war to its fateful conclusion. And yet, not all was blood and death. Acts of courage, mercy, and love punctuated the chaos. Hector's farewell to Andromache, Priam's visit to Achilles to reclaim his son's body, the bravery of warriors who fought despite certain death, and the unyielding loyalty of those who remained true to honor, friendship, and family. The fall of Troy was both magnificent and tragic. The city, once proud and unassailable, was breached through cunning and deception. Fires devoured palaces, swords and arrows struck without mercy, and the gods looked on as mortals paid the price for passion, pride, and the choices of a single prince. Helen returned to Sparta, but the cost was immeasurable: sons and fathers lost, heroes slain, and legacies forever stained by war. Even in victory, the war's consequences stretched far beyond the battlefield. Odysseus's journey home became an epic in itself, years of trials and tribulations that would test his mind, patience, and cunning. Agamemnon, triumphant yet cursed, returned only to face betrayal at home. And the seed of vengeance, hatred, and sorrow took root in families, cities, and nations alike, echoing through time. The Trojan War also demonstrated the fragile line between mortals and gods. Men fought with courage, skill, and strength, but even the mightiest could not escape divine interference. Every arrow guided, every strike redirected, every plague and favor reminded mortals of their place in the grand design. Through it all, the stories endured: Achilles' rage, Hector's nobility, Odysseus' cunning, Paris' desire, Helen's beauty, and the relentless meddling of gods who loved, hated, and shaped the mortal world with both care and cruelty. Legends were born not just in victory, but in loss, in choices, and in moments where courage met fate. The age of heroes had reached its climax. The stories of Troy would endure forever, inspiring awe, fear, and devotion across generations. They were the echoes of Olympus, reflected in mortal hearts, a testament to the intertwining of human courage and divine will. Yet the end of Troy was only the beginning. From its ashes, new tales would emerge: Odysseus' journey home, the founding of cities, the rise of new kings, and the lingering influence of gods on men's fates. The threads of destiny were far from complete, and even now, the gods whispered, plotted, and laughed as the world below continued to turn, shaping the next chapters of history and myth. The shadow of fate. The smoke of Troy had faded, but its shadows lingered across the world. The city that had stood for a decade, proud and impenetrable, was now a ruin, a scar upon the earth. Yet in its ashes stirred new stories, new journeys, and the persistent echo of divine intervention. The age of heroes had reached its fiery climax, but fate, as always, was far from finished. Odysseus, cunning king of Ithaca, set sail for home, his mind a labyrinth of strategies and schemes. 10 years of war had passed, but his journey had only just begun. The gods, still intrigued by mortals who dared challenge fate, shaped his voyage. Poseidon, wrathful at Odysseus for blinding his son Polyphemus, tossed storms across the Aegean. Athena, protective and clever, guided him with subtle interventions, whispers of advice, and divine favor at the moment of greatest peril. Odysseus faced trials no mortal could have imagined, the seductive song of the sirens, the monstrous Scylla and deadly Charybdis, the witch goddess Circe who turned men into swine, and the realm of Hades itself, where the dead whispered secrets and prophecies of doom and hope. Every step of his journey tested courage, intellect, and endurance. And yet, even in despair, he pressed forward, knowing that home, his kingdom, his family, his legacy awaited. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the survivors of Troy scattered like seeds on the wind. Aeneas, son of Aphrodite and Anchises, carried the blood of Troy within him. Guided by the goddess of love and the prophecies of fate, he wandered seas and lands, destined to lay the foundation for a new civilization far from the ruins of his homeland. His journey was a testament to resilience, to hope persisting through catastrophe, and to the idea that even in defeat, destiny could be fulfilled. The war's survivors returned home, too, but not all were welcomed. Agamemnon, once the king of Mycenae and commander of the Greek forces, returned victorious yet cursed. His wife Clytemnestra, enraged by his sacrifices and infidelity, conspired against him. Death and betrayal awaited him on the very threshold of triumph, reminding mortals that the cost of ambition and pride was never confined to the battlefield. Even the gods felt the echoes of Troy. Zeus watched from Olympus, calculating, amused, and wary. Hera, still bitter at the judgment of Paris and the outcome of the war, continued to influence mortal affairs subtly, rewarding and punishing according to her whims. Aphrodite rejoiced in the fulfillment of promises, yet lamented the suffering caused by beauty and desire. Athena, ever wise, observed the consequences of her guidance, knowing that the lessons of heroism were intertwined with the pain and folly of humans. The shadow of fate was long, and it touched every city, every kingdom, every family. Heroes' deeds became the foundation of myths, their triumphs and failures warnings and inspirations for generations yet to come. Cities rose upon the ashes of Troy, kings ruled under the guidance or interference of the gods, and mortals continued to strive, struggle, and endure. Even as civilization rebuilt, the world remembered the price of defiance and ambition. Mortals learned that bravery alone could not guarantee survival, cleverness could not ensure peace, love could create both glory and devastation. And yet, hope endured, a spark left in every heart, a glimmer of resilience whispered to humans by gods who reveled in both chaos and order. The legacy of Troy also revealed a pattern that would echo for centuries, the interconnection of human action and divine will. Every hero, king, and survivor was shaped by gods, yet each had choices to make. Fate guided, but did not always dictate. Courage, cunning, and compassion were their tools, pride, vengeance, and passion were their tests. From this time forward, mortals began to build stories that intertwined with the divine, epic journeys, legendary battles, and the founding of cities whose names would endure beyond memory. Their fates were never entirely their own, yet they carried the power to leave a mark upon the world, a testament to both human agency and divine influence. The age of heroes was fading, yet the gods remained, watching, influencing, guiding, and sometimes punishing. Mortals had learned to endure, to fight, and to hope. Legends persisted in every city, every temple, and every heart. And as time moved forward, the echo of Olympus lingered, subtle yet unmistakable, a reminder that gods and humans shared the world, and that the stories of one were always intertwined with the other. The stage was set for the final era, the twilight of the gods' influence, where mortals would inherit the world, yet never forget the enduring shadow of divinity. The last dawn. The world had changed. The age of gods walking among mortals, of heroes fighting monsters, of cities rising under divine favor, was slowly fading. Olympus still gleamed above the clouds, timeless and unyielding, but the gods' footsteps grew quieter in the affairs of men. Mortals, tempered by fire, war, and courage, had begun to carve their own destinies, shaping civilizations from ingenuity, wisdom, and perseverance. The great heroes, whose deeds had once commanded the attention of gods and mortals alike, had passed into legend. Hercules' strength became a symbol of human endurance and divine blessing, Perseus' cunning a model of intellect and courage, Jason's journey a tale of loyalty and ambition. Their stories were etched into the hearts of mortals, told by poets, sculpted in stone, and remembered in songs immortal not because of their divine blood, but because of the choices they made in a world of uncertainty. Yet the gods did not vanish completely. Olympus remained a realm of power and beauty. Zeus still held dominion over the skies, Hera watched over marriages and oaths, Poseidon stirred the seas, and Hades ruled the unseen world below. Athena's wisdom continued to inspire kings and thinkers, Apollo's light illuminated art and prophecy, and Artemis remained the protector of wilderness and untamed places. Even Aphrodite, Hephaestus, Hermes, and Hestia endured, their influence subtle but enduring, shaping the world in ways that humans often did not notice. Mortals, now aware of their mortality and the limits of divine favor, built civilizations on their own merit. Cities rose with temples honoring the gods, not out of fear, but out of respect and tradition. The stories of Troy, of Hercules' labors, of Odysseus' wanderings, and of Prometheus' gift became part of a collective memory, guiding morality, inspiring courage, and warning against hubris. The gods, in their retreat, allowed mortals to inherit the world, yet their legacy remained. Mountains and rivers bore their names, constellations honored their deeds, festivals celebrated both divine and heroic triumphs. Humanity had grown, but always under the shadow and guidance of Olympus, the memory of power and mystery lingering like a twilight that never fully fades. The decline of direct divine intervention did not erase the lessons of the past. Mortals continued to face challenges, to wage wars, to fall in love, to struggle against injustice and misfortune. But they carried within them the spark of divine fire, the courage, wisdom, and ingenuity that had once been gifts of the gods, now tempered by experience and memory. Hope, the last element that remained in Pandora's jar, endured in human hearts, sustaining civilizations, inspiring stories, and keeping the flame of heroism alive. In villages and cities, humans built temples, schools, and theaters. They explored the seas, charted the stars, and wrote the myths that would carry their understanding of the divine across centuries. Even in the absence of God's direct interference, the principles, legends, and morality imparted by Olympus guided them. The gods' presence, subtle yet eternal, became woven into the fabric of culture, philosophy, and imagination. And so, the story of Greek mythology reached its final dawn not with the thunder of divine wrath, nor the blood of heroes on the battlefield, but with the quiet endurance of humanity. The gods watched, sometimes with pride, sometimes with amusement, as mortals navigated a world of their own making. The heroes' deeds, the love and wrath of gods, the fire given by Prometheus, and the hope left by Pandora all continued to resonate, shaping the world, inspiring generations, and reminding every mortal that while gods may guide, it is humans who must act. The sun rose over the cities of Greece, over the temples, over the mountains and seas, casting light on a world forever touched by gods, heroes, and the inexorable march of fate. And though Olympus would endure, its stories eternal, the mortals below now carried the torch of life, courage, and imagination, ready to write the next chapters of history. The fire of creation, the spark of hope, the trials of heroes, and the shadow of gods all endured, not as myths frozen in time, but as living, breathing echoes in the hearts of those who dared to dream, to fight, and to endure.